The collapse of compassion. In the twilight of the Third Welfare Age, the Republic of Elyria stood as a gilded monument to benevolence gone berserk. Its cities gleamed under solar-paneled spires, its hospitals hummed with gene-editing suites, and its schools dispensed degrees like candy. All free, all guaranteed, all unearned. The state had enshrined a single ironclad principle: need is virtue. But need, as it turned out, was infinitely elastic. Generations of unrestricted welfare, free housing, universal healthcare, unconditional food stipends, no questions asked legal aid, and cradle-to-grave education had created a feedback loop the architects never foresaw. Those with lower cognitive capacity and minimal work drive found themselves not only surviving but thriving by reproducing early and often, buoyed by state support. Meanwhile, the high performers, the engineers, innovators, and entrepreneurs were bled dry. Their 70% marginal tax rates funded not just the system, but the very demographic shift that rendered their labor increasingly futile. Why build a startup when your profits vanish before payroll? Why raise a family when your children's tuition is free, but your own time is consumed by compliance, audits, and paperwork? The bureaucracy swelled to 12 million public employees, more than half the workforce, dedicated not to delivering services, but to verifying eligibility, processing appeals, and managing the endless queues of claimants. Productivity stalled. Innovation flatlined. Birth rates among the productive class plummeted. Elyria wasn't collapsing from war or famine. It was suffocating under the weight of its own generosity. Then came the ascendancy. Led by Chancellor Valeris Kale, the new administration didn't tinker. They detonated the old order. In a single midnight decree, all unconditional welfare was terminated. No more free food without contribution. No more housing without demonstrated value. The bureaucracy was slashed by 92%. Government offices were shuttered, their servers repurposed into AI arbitration nodes that required only verifiable income data. No interviews, no forms, no moral judgments. But the centerpiece of the revolution was the arena. Housed in the hollowed-out core of the former Ministry of Social Equity, the Crimson Colosseum opened its gates to a new social contract. Prove your worth or perish. Criminals, chronic welfare dependents, and those who refused vocational reintegration were given a choice: exile to barren labor colonies, or the arena. 12 to 33 combatants entered per round. One left alive. 30 minutes. No draws. Collars embedded with shaped charges ensured compliance. If more than one heartbeat remained when the clock struck 0, all died instantly. Criminals fought naked and unarmed. Pick up a fallen blade? A sniper's laser painted your temple before your fingers closed. But sponsors, corporations, guilds, even affluent citizens could gift weapons to fighters they deemed promising. Monomolecular swords, pulse pistols, even shoulder-fired micro-rockets. Victory didn't just mean survival, it meant a share of the betting pool, citizenship restoration, and, for the truly exceptional, tax exemptions that lasted a lifetime. Within 3 years, the welfare rolls evaporated. Not through coercion, but through attrition and dread. People sought work. They studied. They innovated. Why risk the arena when you could code an AI tutor or pilot a lunar freighter and pay negative taxes, receiving state bonuses for high output? And the children, they were different. With low IQ, low-effort lineages culled not by policy but by choice and consequence, the national average IQ climbed 11 points in a decade. Schools taught quantum logic to 10-year-olds. Life extension clinics became standard. And the stars? They weren't just for dreaming anymore. Elyria had rediscovered a brutal truth. Compassion without accountability is entropy. And from entropy, they forged a new law: performance is the only right. The arena wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. The protocol. 10 years after the first blood soaked the sands of the Crimson Colosseum, Elyria no longer needed arenas. The system had refined itself. What began as a desperate purge had evolved into a self-correcting engine of human optimization. The arena's true legacy wasn't the bodies it consumed. It was the cultural reset it triggered. Citizens no longer asked, "What can the state give me?" They asked, "What can I build before I die?" And thanks to breakthroughs in telomere regeneration and neural longevity, "Before I die" now stretched well beyond a century. Chancellor Kale, now styled as Archon of Progress, stood before the Synod of Achievers, the governing council composed entirely of individuals who had either won the arena or generated tenfold their lifetime tax burden in verifiable economic value. Behind her, a translucent orbital feed showed the Odyssey, Elyria's first self-sustaining interstellar arc, accelerating past Neptune. On board, 12,000 high-performers, their genomes pre-screened for cognitive resilience, emotional stability, and metabolic efficiency. Not a single welfare-dependent gene in the manifest. This was the SMILE protocol in action: space migration, intelligence increase, life extension, not as slogans but as measurable policy outcomes. The key insight: you don't need surveillance to enforce meritocracy if the system rewards output so aggressively that everyone chooses excellence. Tax rates now functioned inversely. Top 0.1% of value creators paid -25%. The state literally paid them to keep working. The median earner paid 3%. Only those below the productivity threshold, a dynamically calculated benchmark tied to AI-driven labor markets, paid the full 40%, and even then they could opt into vocational gladiator circuits, non-lethal, skill-based combat simulations where victory erased debt and granted tax holidays. Crime had vanished not because of police, but because there was no underclass left to breed resentment. Every child underwent cognitive enrichment from gestation. Neural scaffolding via maternal microdosing of nootropic peptides, early language immersion in symbolic logic, and mandatory problem-solving sprints by age 4. Schools were meritocratic accelerators. Failure meant reassignment to labor-tier education, not hand-holding. And yet, dropout rates were near zero, because no child wanted to be left behind in a society where your tax rate, healthcare access, and even orbital residency rights depended on your last quarter's contribution. Critics from the old alliance of compassionate states called Elyria a dystopia of Darwinian cruelty. But their embassies emptied as their own brightest defected scientists, artists, pilots, drawn by the promise of freedom through performance. In Elyria, you weren't judged by your birth, your trauma, or your identity. You were measured by what you built. And if you built well, you lived longer, thought deeper, and sailed farther than any human before. The final arena match had been held 5 years ago. There simply weren't enough volunteers. The last welfare criminal had retrained as a fusion core maintenance drone pilot, earning enough to sponsor 3 new arena fighters from neighboring failed states. That was the irony. Elyria no longer needed to cull its own. The world now sent its excess to our Colosseum, hoping their kin might win citizenship, IQ-boosting neurographs, and a seat on the next arc. As the Odyssey vanished into the Oort cloud, Archon Kale closed the session with a single phrase, now etched into every public interface across the nation. Merit is mercy, performance is peace. And the stars blinked back. Not in judgment, but in invitation.